Hey guys, my name is Amy Howard and I'm the Disabilities and Mental Health Coordinator for Head Start. In this video series, we've been talking a lot about trauma and we've talked about our emotions and what they look like kind of on a normal day. But today we're going to talk about when they are starting to escalate and how we can manage that. So last week I talked about and read you guys the story Inside Out. So this video is for adults, but it could be for kids. So I do have some visualizations to kind of go along with it. So last week we talked about Inside Out, where we got our emotions. We have scared or fear, we have sadness, we have anger, we have disgust, and we have joy or happiness. So those are the emotions that we discussed last week, and in creating a coping plan like we're doing today, that's my first step, is really to label those emotions. So I know it can feel, when you're dealing with trauma, you can feel all these emotions. Excuse me. You can feel all of these emotions at one time. And some days it can feel like a tidal wave and it's so overwhelming. You feel all of them. You're not just angry or sad or disgusted or things like that. You're all of them all at the same time, and they can get overwhelming very fast. So my first part is to just label, what am I feeling? Am I happy that that event is over? Am I angry that I had to go through that? Am I sad because I lost a friend or something like that? Or am I scared it might happen again? Am I disgusted about what happened to me or what happened to my friend or things like that? So the first part in our coping plan is to label that emotion. What exactly are you feeling? The second thing that, the second step in the coping plan is to gauge our emotions. So now that we figured out what am I feeling, we're going to put that on a scale to kind of see, there's three different stages, like are we at an early warning sign, are we in the middle, or are we at a late warning sign? So in our classrooms at Head Start, a lot of the times we have a feelings thermometer that looks better than this, but it looks something along the lines of this, where kids can gauge, am I feeling happy, am I just kind of okay, kind of in the middle, or am I at a late warning sign where I'm blowing up, I'm throwing a tantrum, or things like that. Another scale that you could use is more of a 3-point scale, is, am I like a pot that's cooking? So are we just getting on the stove where we're okay, we're just kind of waiting? Or are we feeling a little, something's agitating us, we're starting to boil, you see the steam, you see the bubbles, people can kind of see that you're visually upset at this point, and then you could escalate to the busting the cap off the pot, where we might be yelling at this point or crying, or basically everybody knows that we're upset at this point because we are yelling or at to the point where we're at the late stage. We could also do a scale like this that, just a 5-point scale. Sometimes it's good to use colors for younger kids. If they know their numbers, they could do something like that, or just the faces, depending on how old your child is, they could use a different kind of gauge. But the important part is to be able to recognize, okay, like I said, we have our emotion, where are we at? Like, are we to that overwhelming stage that trauma can often bring us into? Or are we to the point like, okay, I need to talk to somebody about it, I need to do a coping skill or something like that? Or we're doing good today. Today is more of a low tide day where we're okay, we can manage this. It's those days that it hits the tidal wave type of grief and overwhelming emotions that we're trying to avoid getting to. So that's what this video is about, is creating a plan to help you avoid getting to this late stage that's up here that trauma can often bring us to. So that's step 2, is to gauge your emotion. The third step is to ground yourself, which means bringing you back to the present moment. Oftentimes in trauma, we get caught in what is known as time traveling. So we could be looking at past events and travel back there and think, what could I have done differently? Could I have done it better? Things like that. So you get caught in the thinking like that, it tends to be kind of negative. So we're trying to get out of that spiral and bring you back to the present moment of what I can do right now. The same thing goes for the future. You could time travel to there too, and that's when you get more. You might feel a lot of anxiety at that point, thinking about the what ifs. What if this happens to me? What if it happens again? What if I don't get that job? What if I can't pay my rent? And things like that, that can often, again, lead you to that overwhelming emotion stage. So we're trying to do these grounding skills to help bring you back to the present moment. And the first one I like to recommend is to give yourself a grounding high five. The key part of grounding is to engage your senses. So you have your sense of touch, you have your taste, smell, sight, and your hearing. So the first thing you would do is find 5 things that you can see, and you want to label them. So can you see the light? Can you see a pen? Can you see your computer, a paper, things like that? You want to literally name 5 things. You can do it out loud so you can hear yourself. That would help, but you really want to engage as many senses as you can to help bring you back to the present. So you got 5 things that you can see. You got 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And if you need a bigger challenge, you can do it in the reverse order too. 5 things you can taste, and gives it more of a challenge and helps you really concentrate on what are the 5 things I can taste and things like that. So it has different kind of levels of it. If you need to try that. But this is a good one, and it also emphasizes again that you need to engage your senses to bring you back to the present moment. What can you do right now? Another way of grounding yourself, and which brings me to the next stage too, is coping skills. But like I said, for this part of the grounding skills, another thing I like to do with the kids that I work with too is what I like to call take a hot chocolate breath. So for hot chocolate, like I have in my cup right here, you have to smell it and then blow it out to keep it cool. You also have something that you get to touch. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it steaming? And things like that. So you're really trying to engage on it so you can smell it. Does it have marshmallows? Does it have chocolate? Did you put mint into it? Raspberry? Whatever kind of flavoring you guys put in your hot chocolate. Can you really smell that? But it practices, again, to help them take those deep breaths, to help regulate their body and their emotions. So again, you smell it. And then you blow it out to cool it down. The same thing works if you guys have a balloon around your house. Again, it's not only something that they can touch, but then it's something that they can also visualize. So when you breathe in, when you breathe out, obviously you blow up the balloon, but it just creates, again, a visualization that they took this deep breath. And with the next couple of things I'm introducing, again, it's all about the visual key, that they can see them taking a deep breath. And you could even make it a game of how big is your breath? How big can you get that balloon if they really need to practice, or maybe they just need a few extra breaths at that time. So the next one they could use is bubbles. I didn't have any bubbles, but I had the wand. But it's the same thing. You want the kids to practice not only deep breathing, but visualizing that breath. How big of a breath can they take? And you want them to really practice this. So it's better to do when they're calm so that their muscle memory will kick in, and they'll do it when they're upset. But again, you have to start somewhere. So if they're upset, you could practice this right now as well. Another thing is to use a paper bag. Paper, not plastic. You take a deep breath. And then you blow it again so you can see them taking a breath. And if you don't have these things around your house, you can always just put your hands on your belly and feel it expand. See it get really big when you take your deep breath, and see how small you can take it when you breathe out. Another thing to, like I said, increase that visualization is to put a cup on your belly so you can see it rise and fall as you take your deep breaths. So those are some good grounding skills that you can use. And like I said, anything you can do to engage your senses and bring you back in that present moment, those are key to engage the senses. The next thing, step 4 on our coping plan, is to use our coping skills. So we have all these skills, and I'll read it for you in case you can't read my handwriting. But We have watching a funny video. I know kids are into TikTok and YouTube and all those things, but sometimes parents too. So you can watch a funny video on there. You can do a craft. You can listen to music. You could volunteer, go and help someone else out. You could go for a walk, exercise, drink some water, call a friend. You could do some meditation, play some soft music, something like that. You could play a game, either with your kid or play by yourself, things like that. Taking deep breaths that we just practiced, taking a bath, trying to relax, praying. If you're have your religious side, you can rein it in and use that to help you calm down as well. You can smell your favorite scent through a candle, or if you like oils, you could use that as well, or perfumes. You could do yoga. You could go for a drive. You could write in your journal. You could read a book, or you could color. And these are just some of the coping skills that I could come up with, or that I like to utilize. But you can come up with a bunch of different ones. These are just, but we want to focus on the positive side of coping skills. So you'll notice I didn't put like eating your favorite food or doing something like that, because coping skills sometimes we fall on negative coping skills like eating, which could lead to overeating or other things like that, that it's kind of hard to moderate. So we want to focus on positive coping skills that we can use at this time. Another thing about coping skills is the coping skills are used to distract you until you reach that calm level, like we had in our, when we were gauging our emotions. If we're up here, we're using our coping skills there as a distraction to bring us back down to these points down here, to distract. We don't want to avoid, we want to distract. Which brings us to the next step, is to process what you're feeling. And that's, again, we want to use the coping skills to distract us so that we can bring us back to the present moment and get us calm before we can process it, before we can talk to a friend about it. Because if you've ever tried talking to an angry child, it's in one ear, out the other. We don't want to get to that stage. We want them to be able to take the deep breaths and be able to talk. Can they label their emotions? Can they gauge it? And things like that. And an important thing about that too is that you might have to go through steps 1 through 4 before you're ready to get to that 5th stage. Sometimes it does take a few extra deep breaths. Sometimes it does take a couple more rounds of using our grounding skills or using our coping skills and things like that. And that's okay. But we don't, like I said, we don't want to just use it as or we don't want to use it as a way to avoid what's really happening, because we want to reach that 5th stage where we're increasing our self. And so if we experience this again, then when we go through it next time, like I said, that muscle memory will kick in and we'll be able to understand better what we're going through, and we know better how to cope with it and things like that. And the more times you practice it, the more natural it's going to feel, and the fewer times you'll hit that overwhelming emotion stage. So those are the things that I really recommend on how to manage our emotions. And those were the 5 steps. So here's the coping plan that we just made. Like I said, the first step is to look at your emotions and recognize, what am I feeling? Am I feeling happy, sad, mad, afraid, scared? Am I feeling guilty, shame, things like that? So really label, what emotion am I feeling? And next was that gauge that I was showing you about. Are we in the cool, calm stage of the early warning signs? Are we feeling a little triggered, or our emotions are feeling a little, something's upsetting us, and you can start to feel it in your body. Maybe your blood pressure is going up, or you're getting a little shaky, things like that. And then the late warning sign, where we're busting the cap off our paw, our temperature is blowing up, or we're reaching that stage where we're yelling, raising our voice, and things like that. The third thing was our grounding skills, where you want to give yourself that grounding high five and really engage your senses into that to bring you back to the present moment, so you're not time traveling to the past again, where you're thinking about I could have done this better, or what if I did that and then this wouldn't happen, things like that. And then also for the future, you don't want to time travel there either, because you get caught up in what ifs and your thoughts start to race about things that haven't even happened yet. So we want to focus on our grounding skills, where we engage our senses and bring us back into the present moment. And then we have our 4th stage, which is our coping skills, or doing a hobby or something that we enjoy, something positive to help us reach that middle middle stage, or at least bring us back down from that late stage, so that we can really focus and get us back to a place where we can reach stage number 5, which is processing and talking to a friend about it, or coming up with a plan of what to do next and things like that. So that's the plan that I created. Like I said, you might have to run through the stages 1 through 4 a couple of times before you get to that 5th stage of processing, and that's okay, because trauma does give us those overwhelming emotions. It does take us there in the flip of a hat, or just like that. And it could happen anywhere. Just like we use our senses for grounding, our senses could also trigger us from the trauma if it's a similar smell or something like that. So these are the skills, and this is the plan. I'd like for you guys to try practicing when you're calm. So like I said, the muscle memory will kick in and you'll be able to use it when you're starting to feel those overwhelming emotions. So those are the skills that I have for you guys. Feel free to watch the video again if you missed something, or if you need to take notes or things like that. But I do encourage you guys to talk to somebody about your trauma that you're experiencing, because it is often helpful to have someone process it with you, because they might notice or recognize something that you haven't, or they could just help you provide comfort, or just someone to talk to when you're feeling unsafe or things like that. Thank you guys so much, and we'll continue this talk in the next video. Thank you. Bye.